Welcome to Moon Basics, a lunar lesson by Lisa's Lookup. Here are some facts about our moon. Our moon is the largest moon relative to its planet. It is made up mostly of lighter elements. It is less dense than Earth. One day on the moon is equal to 29.5 Earth days. We will always see the same side of the moon, known as the near side. The far side of the moon is always facing away from Earth. The moon rises approximately 50 minutes later each day. It is not just visible during the night only. In certain phases, the moon may be visible during the day as well. Here's some information about the far side of the moon. Note, it's not the dark side of the moon. That's a Pink Floyd album. The far side of the moon is the part of the moon that faces away from the Earth. We never see the far side of the moon from Earth. The far side was not seen until it was imaged by the Soviet Luna 3 spacecraft in 1959. How was the moon formed? Answer: catastrophically. It was formed 100 million years after the rest of the solar system. There are several theories, but the most widely accepted theory is that when the ancient planet Theia collided with early Earth, it threw particles into space which became bound by gravity and became the moon. What is the Terminator? Not just an Arnold Schwarzenegger character. The Terminator is the line of demarcation between day and night, or sunrises and sunsets on the moon. It moves across the moon's surface at a rate of around 16 kilometers per hour, or less than 10 miles per hour. One day on the moon lasts about 29.5 Earth days. The Terminator creates the moon's shape or phase that we see from Earth. What a difference a day makes when observing the moon. Here are two photos taken almost exactly 24 hours apart from the same location in central New Jersey in the United States. What do you see? As the Terminator moves slowly across the moon, it creates shadows revealing various features such as craters and mountains as the lighting changes. So full moon is actually the phase that reveals the least of these features. What is a moon phase? There are 8 total phases in a lunar month. A lunar month is just a little over 29.5 days. There are 4 primary phases as indicated below by an icon: new moon, first quarter, full moon, and third quarter. These primary phases occur at a specific time. There are 4 intermediate phases which will occur between the primary phases: waxing crescent, waxing gibbous, waning gibbous, and waning crescent. Here's an example of a lunar month as demonstrated by the website Moon Giant. You can see that the lunar cycle doesn't necessarily coordinate with the calendar. In this case, in October of 2022, we start with a waxing crescent moon, which then goes into first quarter, followed by full moon, last or third quarter, and then a new moon occurs on October 25th of 2022. What is a new moon? NASA says the invisible phase of the moon with the illuminated side of the moon facing the sun and the night side facing Earth. The moon is always in the same part of the sky as the sun and rises and sets with the sun. So not only is the illuminated side facing away from the Earth, but it's also up during the day. Remember, in this phase, the moon doesn't usually pass directly between Earth and the sun due to the inclination of the moon's orbit. It only passes near the sun from our perspective on Earth. Conversely, what is a full moon? A full moon appears full because it is 100% illuminated by the sun. There is no terminator to distinguish between night and day on the moon. The full moon phase occurs at a very specific time. Now let's talk about some features on the moon. What are mare? Mare is the Latin word for sea. The plural of this word is Maria. Maria were formed by the melting and eruption of basaltic lava on the moon's surface. Lunar mare cover approximately 15% of the moon's crust. There are approximately 20 Maria. They are on both sides of the moon, but the largest ones are on the near side, facing Earth. Many can be seen from Earth with the unaided eye. Probably the most famous mare is the Sea of Tranquility, which is known for the Apollo 11 landing. Here, I've labeled some of the more well-known lunar mare. What is Earthshine? Earthshine is the glow on the dark part of a crescent moon caused by the reflection of sunlight off the Earth. Earthshine is strong enough to make the whole moon visible for a few days before or after the new moon. The best time to view is right after sunset and right before sunrise. How about craters and ejecta rays? How are they formed? Craters are formed when rocks or comets from space smashed into the surface of the moon. The impact was so powerful that it pulverized the ground, creating what we call regolith, and sprayed it out to form ejecta rays. Here's an experiment you can try at home to create your own crater ejecta ray simulation, courtesy of JPL NASA. You will need a cake pan, sprinkles, flour, space rocks, just your ordinary rocks will do, and cocoa. First, you want to prepare the moon's subsurface by spreading about an inch of flour into the cake pan. This represents the part of the moon's crust that an impactor will pulverize and then blast out. Next, add your rocks and minerals. You can use sprinkles, of course, to represent the rocks and minerals buried under the surface. Add a thin third layer of the moon's surface by sprinkling cocoa over the top with a spoon. You can also use a sifter for a more even coating. The cocoa represents the surface layer on the moon. Now prepare for impact. Find a spot where you can safely and easily drop a rock into your cake pan. You'll want to put down newspaper or a towel or sheet to catch any baking ingredients that come out of the pan. Simulate a rock impacting the moon by holding a small rock above your head and drop it into the cake pan. Observe the ejecta pattern created by the impact. Did any of the sprinkles get ejected out of the crater? Now you'll want to remove the impactor or rock. Get creative with your craters. Try dropping different size rocks, try different angles, different heights. How does the ejecta pattern differ from one impact to the next? Have fun. Here are some famous examples of craters that you may know. First, we have Plato at the top, Copernicus in the middle, and Tycho craters. You may have seen those naked eye or with binoculars when looking at the moon. Those are some of the more obvious examples. Next, we have Gang of Four. This is Furnarius, Petavius, Vindelinus, and Langrenus. And finally, Gassendi's a fun one, because this one looks like a diamond ring. Here's a concept you may or may not know about: libration. Libration is an apparent or real oscillation of the moon by which parts near the edge of the disk that are often not visible from Earth sometimes come into view. Here's an example that occurred from January 19th to the 23rd of 2022. Libration allowed for one of the best views of Mare Orientale, or the Eastern Sea. Now let's talk about eclipses, because it involves the moon. What is a solar eclipse? A solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes between the sun and the Earth. During a total solar eclipse, the entire face of the sun is blocked and it will become dark to those in the path of totality. During a partial solar eclipse, only some of the face of the sun is blocked. Remember, never look at the sun during any type of solar eclipse. Looking at the sun directly is dangerous and it can damage your eyes. Now let's talk about lunar eclipses. What's a lunar eclipse? When the Earth passes directly between the sun and the moon, a lunar eclipse takes place. During a total lunar eclipse, the entire moon passes into the Earth's umbral shadow. The sequence of eclipses are penumbral, partial, total, partial, and back to penumbral. During a partial lunar eclipse, only a portion of the moon passes through the Earth's umbral shadow. Now let's talk about the umbra versus the penumbra. During an eclipse, two shadows are cast. The first is called the umbra. This shadow gets smaller as it goes away from the sun. It is the dark center of the eclipse shadow. The second shadow is called the penumbra. The penumbra gets larger as it goes away from the sun. Now, how about humans exploring the moon? Of course, everyone knows about the famous example of Apollo 11. On July 20th, 1969, it was one giant leap for mankind. But did you know that all these missions came before Apollo 11? And that all these missions came after Apollo 11? Some were manned, but many were unmanned. And it wasn't just the United States or Russia either that sent these missions. And of course, there are future moon missions to come. Many more missions are planned, but one stands out. According to NASA, Artemis is the first step in the next era of human exploration. Together with commercial and international partners, NASA will establish a sustainable presence on the moon to prepare for missions to Mars. According to NASA, they named the mission Artemis because Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo and goddess of the moon in Greek mythology. Now she personifies our path to the moon as the name of NASA's efforts to return astronauts and a new wave of science payloads and technology demonstrations to the lunar surface. When they land, American astronauts will step foot where no human has ever been before, the moon's south pole. Artemis will occur in 3 stages. Artemis 1, uncrewed test flight around and beyond the moon, will be launching no sooner than October 2nd, 2022. This is the mission that has recently been delayed. Artemis 2, which is a crewed flight beyond the moon, will take humans the furthest they've ever been in space. This will take place no earlier than 2024. And finally, Artemis 3 will land the first female astronaut and first astronaut of color on the moon for 1 week, performing studies on the surface of the moon. This will be NASA's first crewed moon landing mission since Apollo 17 in 1972. Now, if you'd like to observe the moon from home, you should. Go right ahead. Why observe the moon? According to the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, 1, it's easy to find. You can observe it from home, even in the city. You don't need to travel to a dark sky site. The moon is bright. It offers plenty of detail, even in small telescopes or binoculars. Observing the moon is ideal for learning how to operate your telescope and binoculars. Finding the principal features is not hard, so you can learn observing skills from it. And it's our nearest celestial neighbor. You can start your observing with these resources. Check out moon.nasa.gov and look for these downloadable items. Here's an Earth-based tour of the moon that you can check off the features that you see. In honor of International Observe the Moon Night, the Astronomical League is issuing an observing challenge. You can use binoculars or imaging equipment to observe the following 15 targets and then document your observations. Make your observations anytime between October 1st and October 9th and submit your results by November 9th, 2022. You do not need to be a member of the Astronomical League to participate in this challenge. Of course, if you're looking for more of a challenge, check out the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, or RASC's, Advanced Observing Programs. Explore the Moon is ideal for beginning observers who are just learning about telescopes and binoculars. The telescope program is based on 100 lunar features. There's also a binocular program that consists of a reduced set of 40 features. You must be a member to apply for a certificate and PIN, but you need not be Canadian to join. The Isabel Williamson Lunar Observing Program, or IWLOP, is much more advanced. It includes many outstanding craters, mountains, valleys, scarps, ridges, and more. You must be a member to apply for a certificate for this program as well, but again, you need not be Canadian to join. The Astronomical League also has other programs for members: a lunar certification, lunar binocular certification, lunar imaging certification, lunar evolution certificate, lunar 2 observing program. Please note, for these programs, you must be a member to apply. If you'd like to learn more about the moon, check out these great resources. Moon.nasa.gov is an excellent website that contains a lot of reference material to help you learn about the moon. The LRO, or Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, website contains a lot of information about many of the features on the moon. The iOS apps that I recommend are Moon Atlas and Moon Phase. These are available in the Apple Store. My go-to reference for finding different features on the moon is the 21st Century Atlas of the Moon by Charles A. Wood and Maurice J.S. Collins. This is my go-to. And finally, the book that sparked it all for me, 50 Things to See on the Moon by John A. Reed, with the foreword by David Chapman. This book gives you a day-by-day tour of the moon and what features you can see. It will help guide your learning, and all you need is a small telescope or binoculars for the features represented in the book. I hope you enjoy them. Thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and that it inspires you to love the moon as I do. Keep looking up. Wishing you clear skies.